Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Diane. I garden here in the northeast of England, right on the coast. And today Monty and I are going to tell you the top 10 jobs that I like to do in October. Right, so I've split the list into two. The first 5 jobs I'm going to discuss, I personally wouldn't do them any later than October. The second 5 jobs I would do anytime October, November, December, but not January, February, March, because they wreak havoc in your borders. You step all over your bulbs and things. So the first job that I like to do is I like to trim the hedges in October. And this is a job that I wouldn't do later than October, particularly not up here in the northeast of England, for this reason. So as soon as you cut into your hedge, it encourages the plant to make new leaves. And it would take about 4 to 6 weeks for those new leaves to we call it hardening off. It's becoming tough enough to get it through the winter, to stand up against the snow and the frost. Now this is a good example. So a couple of years ago, I decided to take this hedge down to a more manageable level, and I did it at the end of November, and I thought that was fine, and it wasn't. So I cut it down, but because I was dropping the level, I cut into the brown woodiness of the hedge, and the temperature had dropped so much that it just didn't grow back for the rest of the year. And when I would look down on the hedge from my bedroom window, I just had a horrible, ugly brown top to the hedge. So if I cut it now, it's fine. It'll grow new little leaves, they'll harden off, and I'll have a nice green hedge all the way through the winter. So number 2 on my list is sowing seeds in the autumn. And you can't do this with all seeds, but you can with an awful lot of seeds. If in doubt, just Google it. Personally, I'm sowing Amimajus, I'm sowing foxgloves, antirrhinums. What else can you grow? Love in a Miss. That's a great plant to grow. When it flowers, it's Love in a Miss. When it gets its seed head, it's called Devil in a Hedge. What other ones are there? Anywho, there's 2 reasons I like to sow seeds in the autumn. The first is just I love sowing seeds. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I sow seeds all the time. Got thousands of plants. But particularly autumn into winter, you know, your favorite gardening program might be coming to an end. Your gardening magazines haven't got much in them. Your garden's gently dying off. And I just think sowing seeds now is a very positive, uplifting experience. You can just sow them, put them on your kitchen windowsill. You don't need a greenhouse. And then every day you come down in the morning, make your coffee. You can see which seeds have germinated, and it's just lovely. And what happens is they'll grow to a certain height. Don't be alarmed, as I was the first year I did it. So they'll grow to a certain height, you prick them out, you put them into sort of seedling compost, but you keep them under protection, either in a cold frame or a cold greenhouse, or I keep mine in the conservatory. And once the temperature drops below a certain level, those seedlings will just go dormant, and then we call it overwintering. And you just leave them somewhere cold until next spring. But in the meantime, they've made a fantastic root ball. So when you plant them out next April, May, then they just hit the ground running, and you've got a bit of a head start. So number 3 is splitting or dividing your plants. So if you've got big clumps of perennial plants around your garden that either they've outgrown the space or some plants, the older they get, they stop flowering. Um, you dig them up and you can split them, so you can do it with any number of plants. You can do it with monarda, with phlox. I've just done these ones. These are hemerocallis. This is daylily. So these were that was one plant there, split it into two. It does your plants good. I tend to try and do mine every 3 to 4 years. um, and what it does is it just creates repetition throughout your garden of the same plant that you love, and it fills up your borders for free. So number 4 on my list is I like to plant out my foxgloves and my wallflowers no later than October, for the same reason that I've already said. Those little plants, even though they have got some root system, it's not very big, and they're going to need 4 to 6 weeks of relatively warm soil to make a new root ball big enough to get them through the winter. So I'll just show you some that I planted the other day. So these are some of the wallflowers that I planted. I grew these from seed earlier this year, and they've just been hanging around outside my greenhouse. If you notice here, I pinched the tips out, and all the way down here, they're just starting to bush out there. Now they'll continue to grow for a few weeks now, and then they'll just go dormant, and they'll just sit there until next spring, and next spring they will look like this. So this clump here are wallflowers that have been here for about 2 to 3 years now. Some people treat the wallflowers as annuals, but if you haven't got much space in your garden and you want to plant something else, you might pull them out and throw them away. But I get about 2 to 3 years out of my wallflowers. And then what happens is you tend to get more leaf and fewer flowers, and then that's time to replace them. If you look further back here, whoops. So I'll just climb in here and I'll point to these. So all these little foxgloves here, I kid you not, I only planted them out 10 days ago. They weren't much bigger than that, those wallflowers there. And these foxgloves will just make a fabulous root ball in the shelter of this border. They'll be fine over the winter. They're very hardy. And next spring, gloves here will be year tall next spring, and they'll carry on right through early summer. And foxgloves and wallflowers are biennial, which means they'll germinate and grow to this size the first year. They'll make all the activities going on under the soil. They'll make nice little plants, but they don't flower until their second year. So I've grown mine from seed, but it's not too late. You can actually order bare root wallflowers, and they come, and the roots have no soil on them, and they're quite reasonably priced. So number 5 on my list is planting your bulbs, and particularly up here in the northeast of England, I like to get my bulbs in before Halloween, and that's a good cut off. For the same reason that the wallflowers and the foxgloves like that bit of warmth in the soil, so do your bulbs. They need to make that root system so that the bulb can survive throughout the cold and wet of a winter. Tulips, you've got a bit more leeway. I've planted tulips out in back end of November, and they've been fine, but definitely your daffs, your narcissus, any of the other bulbs really, I would want to get them in October. Right, number 6 on my list is to reassess your borders. And I'm going to be brutal this year. So what I mean by reassessing it is truthfully, have a look at your borders, see which plants have performed brilliantly, but more importantly, which plants haven't performed well. So either because they've gotten too old and they've stopped flowering, or they've outgrown the space that they're in and they're taking up too much room. Well, for whatever reason, it's a good time to make a decision and get in the border and get that plant out and open the space up so that you can just plant either the same plant again if you split it, or maybe treat yourself to some new plant. So I'll give you an example here. So if we have a look in the border at that spiky guy there in the back, that is New Zealand satinflower, one of my favourite plants in the garden. Love him, got very sentimental value, and I've split him numerous times over the years. I've got loads of them around the garden. But this particular satinflower here didn't flower at all this year, and he had very few flowers last year. So I've made the decision that he is going to come out and I'm plant something else in his space. I had another New Zealand satinflower in the border here. So in this area here, if you can see, I'll come and stand right in the middle. So a satinflower which had, is it the circumference that goes right the way around? He was massive, this tall, and I'll put a link to a video that I shot earlier in the year, and it was bizarre. One half of him had beautiful flowers and this half no flowers whatsoever, so very lopsided. So I've decided, right, dug him out. I took new plants off from the outside, they're going somewhere else. I have planted up the area with about 10 foxgloves here, and in my greenhouse that I use, I've got loads of lupins, and I'm going to plant a big patch of lupins in this part of the garden. So it's very positive, you know, don't be frightened to say, right, it's time, I'm going to let you go. Right, number 7 is cut back your floppy foliage. So there are certain plants which stay upright through the winter, and they're not affected by the wind, and they have great architectural structure and brilliant seed heads, and they're brilliant. And I'll show you some of those. So this beautiful plant here is called Monarda. He'll stay upright. All these seed heads will feed birds. This is hydrangea. There's no way will a hydrangea flop, and all these beautiful flowers will just sort of dry on the shrub, and you leave the heads on, and it protects the bud that is coming up to provide next year's flower. So there's plants like that that you don't cut back. But then there are other plants, such as, for example, in my garden, oxeye daisy. And I'll show you where I've just cut back a patch of that. So this patch of oxeye daisy here, and I'll put a link, I'll put an excerpt of the video that I've just shot where I cut back this oxeye daisy. And he was about this tall, and he was completely horizontal. He was right over all this brown soil here. Exactly where I wanted to plant out my plants that I'd split, like I'd split this geum and this little foxglove, which I've just planted, and wallflowers. I've got more foxgloves planted here. So if you leave some of your plants that flop onto the soil, They get trodden on, they get wet, they get muddy, they go black and slimy, and all you're doing really is encouraging slugs, particularly in my garden. So those kind of plants, yes, I cut them back, looks much neater, opens up the soil, and next spring, I'm actually standing on loads of bulbs here, but they're all under the soil. Um, Next spring, I'll see those bulbs come up. If I'd left the oxeye daisy just lying all over the soil, I wouldn't see the bulbs come up. And when I went in to cut the oxeye daisy back, I'd stand on the bulb. So I like to do that in October. Um, so staying in this border, this is another example. There are a few plants that you must leave the foliage over the winter, because if you cut it off, you don't get any flowers the next year. And this is one of them. And this beautiful plant is Cosmia Lucifer. Anybody who's got it in their garden will know it flops mercilessly over your borders. It looks beautiful, but last week this was flopped right over these plants here. So I've just pinned them back with a metal support. And what you have to do with these plants, you can see here on this leaf, it's already started. You have to let the greenness go seep out of the leaves back down into the bulb, and that feeds the bulb, and you'll get a better flower next year. This leaf has already started to go over. You see it's sort of going yellows and browns, and actually if you just go with it and look at the beauty of this plant when it's in its autumnal garb, it's beautiful. But the secret there is get it sort of pinned up, otherwise it'll just do the same as the oxeye daisy and it'll lie over all of your soil. So again, last week pinned that up, planted out all these wallflowers here, and this big patch of sweet William. So another plant in my garden that I must remember not to cut back too early is there's the peony. So I've got lots of big patches of Sarah Bernhard peony. This is a patch here. That's another patch there. Again, if you look at it, it's just starting to take on its autumn color. It gets beautiful sort of purpley red tinges to the leaves. Fabulous in the autumn. And I'll just leave that. A few years ago, when I knew no better, I thought, oh, I'm gonna, when it finished flowering, I thought, right, I'm gonna cut that back and then I can plant loads of other things in it, sort of around the base of it. And I didn't get a single peony flower the next year. So I know now you must let the peonies foliage die right down, all the nutrients go back down into whatever a peony has, a root, a bulb or a comb, and you'll get fabulous flowers the next year. Right, number 8 on my list is weed and mulch, and I'm classing these two things together in the same point. So I like to get into the borders in the autumn to weed, because I know that all the plants are basically gently going dormant, and even if I stand on a plant and crush its leaves, I'm not damaging the roots. Whereas if you leave your weeding and your mulching until the spring, as some people like to do that, I get in the border with my huge work boots on and I just stand all over the new foliage that's coming up. So the other point that's good about weeding at this time of year is that the weeds, like your perennials, will be going dormant. They're not growing as vigorously. So if you pull your weeds out now, your annual weeds will be gone. Your perennial weeds, which will come unless you get the taproot out, they will come back year after year after year. But you get rid of them now, and it weakens that weed. So next year it won't grow as vigorously. So yes, weed everything, which exposes all of your soil, which brings me to the second point, which is mulching. And for those of you who don't know what a mulch is, it's basically 2 or 3 inches of organic matter that you lie over the top of your soil, either spring or autumn. I like to do it in the autumn. It cuts all the light from getting through to your soil, so it suppresses that weed growth. The other thing it does is it acts like a protective blanket. It keeps the plants, the soil insulated against the worst of the winter weather, so the cold, the frost, and also if you mulch around your the crowns of your plants and that, it sort of protects them. It's like wrapping them in a little blanket. And you can mulch with a number of things. One of my favorites is leaf mold. So you can see I have lots of trees in this garden. Any of the leaves that fall in the autumn on the borders, I just leave them in situ. But any leaves that fall on the driveway or on this lawn, this thread of weedy grass that goes through the middle, I just get my lawnmower out and I go over the top of them. It shreds them. I keep every plastic compost bag that I've got. I don't throw them away. So I fill the compost bag with the shredded leaves, poke loads of holes in the compost bag, put a watering can of water in them, scrunch them up and put them somewhere out of sight for at least a year. So at the moment I have 15 sacks of leaf mold round the back of the greenhouse that I use. And you just get it out and you after you've weeded, and you put it on your soil all around your plants, and it looks beautiful, it smells gorgeous, and the worms get straight to it and they start pulling it all down into the soil. So leaf mold won't actually feed your plants. It's got no nutritional value, but it protects the plants and it changes your soil structure. It improves it. It's brilliant. The other thing you can mulch with is your own homemade compost. We'll go down the garden. I'll show you where my compost bins are. So this is one of my compost bins. This is Old Faithful. I've had him for years. And if you have a look in here, he's got grass cuttings off the other day. He's also, I'm not going to put my hand in there, I'll just show you. These are all the vegetable peelings and that from my kitchen compost bin that I put in every day. I don't normally leave the lid off him, but he was a bit on the dry side, so that's why the lid's off, to let the rain on. This beauty is my new compost bin. Is one of these really swanky ones where you unpin him and then you can tumble him. And I haven't opened this compost bin because he was full. I haven't opened him for at least 2 months. Shall we have a look inside? I hope nothing horrible jumps out at us. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. Gorgeous. I am tempted to stick my hand in there. Right, let's have a look. Oh, look at that. That is gorgeous. And I was watching Monty Don and he was talking about compost. And he said, if your compost is slimy or it's smelly, then something isn't right. It's either too wet. Well, it's probably because it's too wet. This has an hole here that, and it goes through the tube and the air goes through. I'm just delighted with that. This is the kind of green matter I was putting in, and then you just tumble it and that's what it looks like. So it's full of eggshells as well. So I would just empty him out. Can't wait to do that now. And the bottom of that one, I'll get the new compost out, the old compost, I should say, out the bottom of that one, mulch that. Now, your homemade compost is full of nutrition for your plants. There's not a better thing you could give it. So number 9 on my list is plant up your baskets and your tubs for winter. So if you can see, these are my summer baskets. They've been full of splendid bacopa and geraniums, or the true name is pelargonium, but you know, they're finished. So what I'm going to do is the bacopa, I treat it as an annual, get rid of that. I'm going to lift the whole inside this lovely outer covering here are just compost bags to keep the moisture in. I'm going to lift the whole thing out, store that on the floor in my greenhouse, and I'm going to plant these baskets up with new soil, and I'm going to put miniature daffodils in tete-a-tete, and then on top I'm going to put lots of my wallflowers in. So next spring, when I walk up here, I'll be able to see and smell all of my lovely wallflowers. This tub here, I don't know whether you can see it, this beautiful tub was a present of my sister. I've been in the process of emptying this out. I'm going to underplant it with bulbs, and I've got some 3 miniature conifers and a lot of winter flowering heather, and I'm going to do that. So it's a good time now to do your winter baskets. So final point, number 10, is general maintenance. So it's a good time as your borders sort of die down and you empty them out and cut them back, to get in there with any ladders that you might need to do general maintenance. So things like painting your stucco, if your window frames need any attention, or your windows, trellis, if your trellis needs painting, if you've got any block paving that needs a good weed, if you're that way inclined, you might like to clean it with a pressure hose, or give it a good brush. So that's it. That's my top 10 jobs for October. And you know, it's a lovely month to get out there because it's still relatively warm. You might not think that today, but yeah, it gives you a chance to get out and really notice how beautiful your garden is becoming in the autumn. You really notice all those oranges and russets that the leaves are turning. It's a great time to bird watch because I have a little robin follows me around, hopeful that I'll upturn a worm. But you can see that's how I spotted the finches on my Rudbeckia heads around there. So yes, if you can, do try and get out, even if it's to do nothing but sit with a cup of tea and just enjoy your beautiful autumn garden. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like. It really does make a difference to me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.